Hey everyone, before this video starts, I wanted to hop on here and give a quick disclaimer. I know some people may watch this and think that this panel is not very inclusive of people from Asia or the APAC region. However, my disclaimer is that there were 8 people who were supposed to be on the panel that actually would look more familiar to people as what an Asian person might look like. However, all those people stood me up on 2 different occasions. So I felt it was necessary to continue the panel with the ladies who showed up and still wanted to share their experiences because their experiences matter just as much as anyone else's. And I didn't feel like it was right to cancel the panel altogether just because other parties decided not to show up unannounced. So please enjoy the video. I think the information that I shared here is still very important and very pertinent and applies to a lot of people. Therefore, we charged forward and it came out to be an amazing panel. So it is not as inclusive as I wanted it to be initially. However, I cannot speak for the people who did not show up and therefore not representing other people within the Asian community. Pacific Islanders showed up and showed out, and so did India. So I appreciate them, and you're going to enjoy this panel. So stay tuned.
And he's like, Isha, you're really good at your work, and you have such good command over your English. Do all the people in India have that? Like, Indians don't generally have a good command over their, language. How do you have that? And I was like, most of us actually go to English medium schools. Like, I really don't have the words to explain to you that, even though you are praising me in your own convoluted way, but you are insulting me and my country at the same time.
Welcome, ladies, to today's discussion. We are going to be talking about race in the U.S. from the Asia Pacific perspective. And so I would like to know from you ladies, do you guys think that race or racism is an issue within the U.S.? And if not, or if so, explain why you think so. And can you also let me know how you think people with backgrounds from the APAC region are treated differently in comparison to maybe white people in the United States?
So, hi, my name's Chyanne. I am from Guam. So, the indigenous people of the Northern Mariana Islands are Chamorro, but specifically, I'm from Guam. I think that race is an issue in the U.S., and it's something that travels throughout everywhere that the U.S. has laid their footsteps on. So, including our island back home. And a big part of the racial issues back home that I've experienced is just like here, people who have darker skin or are of African American descent, within our culture, if you're darker, they kind of look at you differently, or they say you're not as attractive. So, things like that have made an impact on Western civilization, has made an impact on little islands like us, or little remote places like that, and the thinking like that has a big impact on the younger growing community. So I would say that race is an issue, and it starts here in the U.S. and it does, employ its um, hardships on everybody else in their surrounding communities.
It's actually nice, Shyam, that you brought up. I'm actually from an Indian descent. Hi, I'm Isha. And it's really interesting how much of an impact a fairer skin has on countries like India. Like, there are legit fairness creams that are sold out there to actually make you fairer and make you look, because that is like being the epitome of being pretty. So if you're fair, that means you're pretty. Nothing else really matters. Like, even when I was pregnant, a lot of time what I'd hear is that you should eat this food and you should maybe, do this to make sure that you have a fair daughter. And it just blew my mind off. Like, there is so much that she could do in her life that could make her successful. But most of the things that people really cared about is her being fair, or, every single time that I get tanned, I get like really bombarded by my family that, you're just not taking care of your skin. It's not good. You should do X, Y, and Z. You should. So, and it's not just about that. That is a culture that goes around the world. And when I moved to the US, quite a few years back now, you really think you are moving to this country with, where all your dreams are going to come true. And then you come across these people which carry the burden of the white supremacy, as they call it. And it's it's disheartening at that point in time that you are basically giving all your judgments based on the color of my skin and not on my ability to do a job. And you see it at a lot of workplaces, and at places where you wouldn't even expect it. Like, I have been on holidays. And one of these holidays, to be very specific, was in Costa Rica. And there was this woman who was a doctor's wife from Texas. And I just can't forget her because the way she treated me, it was all wrong. But just because it was my first experience with hardcore racism, and I was like, I don't even know what to say. Like, literally, I am more educated than you are. I'm earning a lot more than you are. I am doing anything and everything better than you have ever done in your life. And we have a 25-year age gap between the two of us, but you're still somebody who thinks that your skin color defines you and my skin color defines me. It's, why can it just not be equal? Like, how is it that you were handed a silver spoon just because you were born white? So yeah, but you see it at all different places. You see it, in muted tones, and these are the same people who go, "Oh no, we are not racist at all. We'll hold up banners when protests come up, and we'll be standing by your side." But when you are in an environment where they want to like reiterate that they're white and you're not, they'll do it to their own benefit.
So I do believe I'm same place where Cheyenne is from. Tomorrow are the native people of Guam. We're not Guamanians. We are tomorrow. Just want to set that tone right now. Um, but I do believe in racism. I witnessed it the first time coming out here to Washington, living out in the redneck, the Royal Washington, and being one of five people of color, and just noticing how much of a change it was compared to being back on Guam, and um, it was very eye-opening at first. I spent the whole year kind of just watching over my back, especially in my neighborhood. Even though my uncle was well known, who we were living with, we still had to like think about who I was associated with and making sure that I wasn't going to anybody's yard, anybody's nothing like that. And I didn't specifically can't really remember my first time I noticed how my well, first off being my color when I first got here, but not in Roy, but when I coming out from Roy to then Tacoma, and then kind of noticing some things, even though like living in Parkland is really diverse, and really glad that I got to go to Keithley where I learned more cultures, but I realized how much people didn't like us. Like just being here in the States and just being here on their land, and I just never understood it. And I just let it go, and not until I really got older, and I was like, wow.
Oh, but I did want to add to what Isha said. When me and my husband is African American, so that when we do want to travel or we do plan on taking vacations, he's always like, "Well, we have to check, the diversity there before we go there." And like in the beginning, I was just kind of ignorant to that, like, yeah, but there's nice people out in the world; they'll be okay. But then when we went to Oregon for school, we didn't do too much of research on how things would be when we would get there. So one time we were
Mm,
walking down the street and we literally got called the N word when we were walking to our dorm, and we're just like, wow. So that's kind of one of the reasons why we moved back here from doing our first year at the University of
wow.
Oregon. But after that, I was just like, yeah, we need to see how many other people like us actually travel there before we there, because we want to have, a good time, but also be comfortable and not have to worry about who's looking at
Right.
us, what's going to happen if we go back to our room. So that's
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
something that I always have to look, or people of our background have to search, when we go places, because oftentimes I have, usual white friends that say, oh, you guys should go here or try this, and usually in the back of our heads in front of them we'll say, oh yeah, that's good, but in the back of our heads when we get home we'll be like, we got to look into it
No,
before we
really. Yeah, absolutely. I
yeah.
completely hear you there.
And
And that
that's that
happens
truth, like we have to do stuff like that.
exactly. They'll just offhandedly comment on something that, you wouldn't know this, but this is how we do it in the US. And I'm like, excuse me, that has nothing to do with me being an Asian or me being an Indian. Like, really. Uh, it's just one of those things. Like, one of these times, what I remember is, you know, just an offhanded comment that, yeah, all Indians are mostly intelligent because you study so much, your parents force you into it. I was like, excuse me, just because most of the Indians are doing well in lives and they are the top of companies like Google and Microsoft, that doesn't mean our parents had to force us into it. Yes, we had a lot of competition in our country. Yes, we had to work really hard for what we achieved. But why are you taking that away from us? Like, that's not something to make a joke about. Like, why is that a joke for you? Like, yes, it is a country of a population with over a billion. Everything that I got in life was really hard earned. And no, I don't want to make a joke about it.
Yeah, and being islander, a lot of times we get put in with like the Asian community, which is not a problem. It's something that you just have to learn throughout life. But a lot of times, like, I did really well in school. I thought I was a pretty smart kid, but when I would do good or I would have good test scores, people would be like, "Oh, it's the Asian in you," but really,
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah,
not Asian. I'm Pacific Islander, and I take pride in where I come from because our people are not well known, and I feel
absolutely.
like we contributed a lot to the U.S. during their war times, but you can't blame them for their ignorance because it wasn't taught to them. So I
Yeah.
always take the time to teach people when they don't know, and if they're willing to listen. But yeah, you learn something new every day, and you just hope that people are as open-minded as you'd hope them, you'd wish them to be.
Most of the time, yeah, they are not, and you
Yeah.
can't expect them to be. It's just one of those things that, yeah, you had to come here because you did not have enough opportunities in your country. No, that's not
Yeah.
true. You've not been to India. Yes, I have more opportunities here. Yes, maybe I came here for a better life, but that doesn't mean it is one of those godforsaken countries that's still suffering from malaria.
Yeah.
Get over that image that you have.
Like
Just go travel outside US. Just do your research before, you point fingers at others and, you
yeah.
know, call names and say that, you're just because of your skin color and that's the reason why you're smart. That's the reason why you have everything that you have. Yes. If it's a positive, it's bad. If it's a negative, it's bad, obviously. But, you know,
Yeah.
I really don't know how to then argue the same problem. So, yeah.
Right. And
You
when you
just learn to live with it.
right. But I think one thing that I kind of disagree with you guys on is when you're saying, oh, well, they don't know. And it's like, well, if they want to keep preaching that there's the superior race,
Yeah.
why the fuck do you then? How do you not know? Aren't you smarter? Aren't you better?
Yeah.
Aren't you all
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
better?
It's
Then why don't they know? So for me, I don't give people like that a pass and say, well, they just don't know. No, they're claiming to be all of these great things. So I'm going to need you to have an education then.
yeah.
Yeah.
You want to say to me or my group of people and assume that you are better or you're superior, but then at the same time, you don't know shit.
Yeah.
You need to have the education. You need to be well traveled. You need to know these things before you think you can just have an opinion on everybody else's life.
And I think that's something too that's taught at home when when you're coming from a different country to the US is they don't know, and you're supposed to have that saying, like, give them that excuse, when really, like you said, we shouldn't, because they should know better if they're going to be claiming all that. So yeah, yeah, when you hear it from a, your perspective, and you hear how we sound, it's like, yeah, that's true. Like, why do we have to keep making excuses for someone like that from where we come from? Why do we have to always have, oh, it's okay, just let it slide, when it's us, it's not the same thing.
Yeah. I actually have a very interesting story about that. So this is like years back. I was still in school. I was doing my pre-med at that time. So yeah, I've been at a lot of done a lot of different things. And so one of my uncles, his daughter is the same age as me. He took us to a career fair where all these European universities were there to woo, students from India, because obviously they want our money, but they don't want our color there. But again, so there were a lot of, from an Indian perspective, whites and blacks who had come to the country for this career fair. There were a lot of booths which were set up with all the universities there. And this uncle, he's standing at one of the stalls. He is talking super nicely, and I have never seen him being this nice. It's obviously a white woman standing in front of him. The next stall we go to, there's a black guy who's there. He's trying to explain. He's like, no, 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 we don't want to come to this university. Uh, Equally weighted universities, no big difference. And I was still a young kid at that point in time. And I was like, what was the difference? I was equally interested in the other university. And he was like, did you see the first woman? She spoke such good English. I was like, that's her native language. So, she will obviously speak English like the way you do, you talk in your native language. And as far as I understood, the guy was as good in his English. So, he just did not want to say it outright that even being an Indian, he had this bias in his own head where he thought that the whites are more superior and you have to respect them. And I'm like, no, if you do that, what are you like really doing? And like, you're a kid, you won't understand. And I'm like, no, but I really don't. You'll have to explain that to me. Like, I don't understand this. Why did you do this? Like, I was equally interested in both the universities. But yeah, it was just one of the eye-opening experiences for me, and I still remember it to date. And I'm like, I just don't know why he did that, but you know, in India, you are brought up with that mindset that maybe those people, because the country was under the British rule for over 150 years, there is that innate bias in your head where you think that the color of the skin defines you. You'll be a slave till the time you believe you're a slave.
Okay, so second question for you ladies is, do either of you remember the first time someone pointed out that you were Indian or that you were Cheyenne Asian? Because that's probably what they said you were. They probably didn't say that you were Chamorro, that you were Guamanian. Do you guys remember the first time someone pointed that out? And I know, Isha, you weren't born in the US, so was it something that happened once you got here that someone's pointing out that you're different?
It actually happened to me back in India. I had two of my colleagues. One of them was an American, but working in Hong Kong, and one was from Hong Kong, who had come to India for meetings, and I was just spending a lot of time with them, and we've spoken over the phone a million times. And he's like, Isha, you're really good at your work, and you have such good command over your English. Do all the people in India have that? Like, Indians don't generally have a good command over their language. How do you have that? And I was like, most of us actually go to English medium schools. Like, literally, the way we are taught is my English would be better than my Hindi most of the times, and I am switching between the two languages most of the times. I don't even realize it. My parents made sure that when I was growing up, it was one of the primary languages that they spoke. So like, I really don't have the words to explain to you that, you, even though you are praising me in your own convoluted way, but you are insulting me and my country at the same time.
Yeah, it's definitely a backhanded compliment. It's not that.
Yeah.
That's not a compliment. That's some bullshit. What does he mean by command over the English language? Like, is he saying that you don't really have a thick Indian accent when you're speaking?
Yeah.
Or is he
Yeah.
saying that he
Basically.
implies that you know like a vast vocabulary in English?
So my vocabulary is better than his. Is what he was wanting to say, that you're using nicer words, you have better grammar, and I'm like, yeah, because there was a lot of emphasis that was laid on it. Even the worst of schools in India would be doing that, because it is just stated that, and it is a global language. It is spoken by the maximum number of people, so it is important of a language to know for people who come from countries where it is not the primary spoken language. But yes, they have to work hard to know that language, but they are doing that. And just take it, you know, with a pinch of salt, that maybe they are doing a better job at it, and they are teaching grammar in a way which is better than you yourself learn grammar now. So, just one of those things. So the first taste of racism, I actually got it in my own country.
So my first time that I was told that I looked different or I am different from everybody was actually when I did move out here from Guam. One of the first schools I attended was out in Roy, Washington. So a similar story to Candace's. It was show and tell, and because I knew I was different and I took pride in where I'm from, I brought a flag from the island of Guam, and one of the students there said, "Oh yeah, she's not from here," and like before you go up to do your presentation, it's kind of like, oh, you knew that already. And it's a culture shock thing for me too, because I was like, oh wow, I'm here to show you and represent where I'm from and give you some insight because I thought you'd be interested in it. But then when you hear a remark like that, it's almost like you want to just go sit back down at your desk and shove your flag to the bottom of your backpack and never talk about it again. So I would say that's one of the times that I was told that I look different or I am different from everybody in the classroom. And it started with one of the little kids, and here in Washington was my first time hearing that.
Cheyenne, when did you come here from Guam?
It was in 2002, so I've been out here for a while, but um, I was born and raised there for a while and then moved out here. And most of my family's back home, so we are really still connected, and we do travel back here and there.
Okay, so piggybacking off of the first question, do you guys have any experiences in school where you've experienced racism from peers, teachers, or both? Let's start with like grade school and then go into college experiences. Isha, since you're going to be speaking from being in India, I don't know if it's called racism or if it's called prejudice based off of skin color, since you said that colorism is a huge thing in India. Like, do you remember any kind of experiences with those from peers, teachers, or both?
I did not do my education here. So all my education, my college, my undergrad, my MBA, then the CFA also was back in India. I moved here via when I had already started working. So most of my experiences come from work. So yeah, but that's the first time I was really made aware of my color. And back in India, it was I belong to one of the areas which has fairer skin, and that's the reason why I got endowed with it. Uh, so the whole color thing got entrenched in me, and the idea of it, how people actually feel because of a darker color, is something that I realized only after I came here. Like, I used to look down upon those advertisements on the television and everywhere in the media back in India, that yeah, get fairer skin, apply this for 10 days and you'll have a fairer skin. I was like, why do they do this? Why do people need to care about it? And once I got here, is I realized why they have to do it, because it just basically differentiates you from the other people right away.
How about you, Cheyenne?
So yeah, like I mentioned before, when I first moved out here in grade school, so elementary school, I experienced that, and then middle through high school is when I moved out to FP district, and it wasn't really like teachers that would point it out. It would just be the constant like, because like I mentioned before, I thought I did pretty well in school, and I thought it really highly of myself when it came to grades because I always tried to do good. But every time I did do good, or I would pass tests and others in class wouldn't, they would always say, "Oh, it's because you're Asian," and constantly I'd always have to say, or just be quiet and just be like, "It's okay. It's another one of those people that just don't know." So just those remarks. But recently, when I was telling my sister that I was coming on this talk to talk about things like this, she had mentioned something about her experience in elementary school. They were learning about green cards and what places would need that to come here. And so she raised her hand, and I think she was maybe in like first or second grade. And she told her teacher she's from Guam, and the teacher said, "Oh yeah, you probably need a green card. You just didn't know that." So, yeah, I told her, that was probably pretty hard for you to hear when you're that young. She's like, "Yeah, because I felt so different from everybody, and I felt like everybody during the class period was, gonna look at me different after that." And from my perspective as an adult now, I was just thinking like, how can you say something like that to a little kid that you're teaching about history and you don't even know the history of the U.S. that you're teaching? Because Guam is a U.S. territory, so we have all the same rights as Americans except for being able to vote for the president and some other things, but that's one of the main ones. But we don't need a green card. We do get a social security card, a birth certificate, and it's all stamped with the U.S. symbol. So hearing that, she went home and told my mom, and she was like, that's sad that she had to hear that. But again, with the excuse, they didn't know, which she should have.
Dang. So, and then Cheyenne, when you went to college, you said that you moved to Oregon, and it was a whole nother ball game. So, do you have one other like example from going to college in Oregon?
Oh,
You,
so yeah, me and my husband went to college in Oregon for our freshman year, and it wasn't personally me, but him. Every time we'd go anywhere or we'd walk around campus, because he's African American, the first question was, "Are you on the football team?" And constantly, I just look at him like, "You can't be smart and just go to school. Why do you have to be here on a sports scholarship?" Like, it's good that people of his descent are like talented and they can go on and pursue things like that. But he wasn't ever that big into sports. He liked be doing good in school. So when he made it there, he thought highly of it, and he was very proud. But every time we'd hear that, we were just like, why does he have to be on the football team? Like, because he's African American. That shouldn't be the reason why any other African American student is here, because of a sports thing. And that's one of the big issues that we ran into when we were out there in Oregon.
yeah, it is. It's like, oh, it can't be a scholarship based off of merit and his grades. He's one of the what they call it. It's either sports or it's affirmative action. Oh, the black person is here because they got here because
Oh, you got it because
yeah, there's a
yeah,
or they play sports. They're not smart, but they're here because they play sports. They're going to help us win games, which is ridiculous.
yeah, like literally like on campus, and even when we go out, anywhere, the first thing they'd say was, "Oh, are you on the football team? What number are you?" And we're just like, "No, we're just regular college students." So yeah, that was our college experience.
And so, Isha, you said that when you came here and you started to experience racism, it was mostly in the workplace. And so, I'm wondering how race shows up in you guys' everyday lives outside of work, and then also within the workplace. Can you share an experience where you've had a racist encounter or some type of microaggressions, and it had to do with your race?
One of these times, so my work, and Tiara, as you know it, I am in a lot of these meetings, which end up being sexist and racist for me a lot of times, because finance again is, the man's world, and girls can't do numbers, but that's a different story altogether. But again, there would be a lot of times that, there is people don't really see there's somebody intelligent who's sitting across from them on the table. And what my work involves is asking a lot of questions. A lot of times I'd be speaking to CEOs of big companies, and I'm the primary analyst in them and have to ask the difficult questions or give them the difficult news of around that we don't really think that you're doing that well. And one of these times, one of the CEOs, every single time I asked him a question, he wouldn't look back at me and answer. He'd look at, the other men and other white people sitting in the room. And I'm like, it is disheartening, because I've prepared for this meeting. I've prepared for weeks to make sure that I have the best questions for you. And, just don't pass them offhandedly and say that, oh yeah, that's not important, or and that wasn't the one-off experience. That happened a couple of times where it's like they wouldn't look at me directly, as if looking at somebody else would make them more of a white or a man just because they're doing that. But yeah, a lot of times that's what I felt, that they really felt that our stature would reduce by quite a lot if we answer her directly, because they had a problem with it. And yeah, so that's at the workplace. Outside the workplace, people generally have to talk to me about the Indian curry and what's the masala that they're supposed to use to have their curry the way the Indians make it. Second is the whole arranged marriage thing, that yeah, you can't really choose who you marry, right? Dude, you have your websites where you meet guys and you meet girls. How is an arranged marriage any different from that? And even if it is, I have an arranged marriage and I am more than happy with my husband. And that doesn't mean that we don't love each other, or we did not get a chance to date each other for a long enough time before we decided to, be married. Just because our parents get along with each other doesn't make it any less important. And the third, obviously, is, oh yeah, your parents will always live with you, because so the fact that we love our parents and the fact that we respect our parents, and we let them live along with us when they get old and we are ready to take care of them, makes us more primary humans as against the more complicated people that you are. I will never understand that. So yes, the next time you're asking me a curry question, there are more than 1 million curries that come from India. And no, there's not a single masala that I can give you that will make every one of your curries tasty. And we are just not paneer and dal makhani. I'm sorry.
All right, Chyanne, let's get back in some more of these questions. This is just going to be a talk about the Pacific Islander perspective then.
Okay.
Okay, Chyanne. So fast forwarding into adulthood, how does racism show up in your everyday life? So
I think just being a brown person in the U.S. And people or the white people in the U.S., they're not really educated on the different types of brown people they are. So anywhere you go, like even a walk in the neighborhood, you'll get stares from the white older people, like, what is she? And with everything going on, in the U.S. right now, the protests, and then a couple months back with the Trump wall wanting to be built in the border, you kind of get a whole bunch of stares from anybody from the young and old, white people in the neighborhood, especially like walking in our community. When I go to certain stores in certain districts, or like even out to University Place, I feel like I shouldn't be going to the Whole Foods there or the Trader Joe's there, but we love stuff there, so we go there. So yeah, I think just anywhere you go now with everything going on, I know it's not new. Racism isn't new. It's just the media coverage on it. So, people like us were more prone to be, approached on things. So I'm always making sure that I'm aware of my surroundings when the kids are with me, making sure we have a buddy system, because, anything can happen. And, when the kids are young, everything they see in life is positive. And then there's the one encounter that they'll run into when they go to the store, like, where are you? And, who are you with? Let me see your pockets, things like that, that'll just, take away their innocence. And that's how, the racism or the the evil cycle of that continues. So, and I've been a part of that too, just walking into the store, and right when I get in there, they're already following me down the aisles, and I'm just like, I'm here to shop, and give me a chance to at least walk in the store before you start profiling me. Or even when I go to Walmart, for a quick stop to get the baby Pampers, I'll see, other people walking out, or, white people walking out and their receipts not being checked. And then when I have my one item and my one receipt in my hand, I already know to just walk over to them, because instead of making a big scene and saying, why are you checking mine and not theirs, just get it over and done with. And that's another excuse, that we give to, the ignorance that happens. So, yeah.
Question for you, Chyanne. So does this happen, so like the profiling, does this happen when you're with TJ since he's black, or does this happen when you're also by yourself? Because I'm wondering, are they following you? Are they looking at you weird if you're with the black dude, or do they do it to you even when you're not with TJ?
So yeah, the instances that I did bring up was just me by myself walking in. But of course it's happened with him, too. And me having to say, of course, is a horrible thing. But yes, it has happened with both of us. But it does happen when it's just me or me and my sisters when we're walking in, So, I've kind of told them, like, just like any other parent, just be quiet, pick your battles, learn how to just use your proper, self when you're put in those situations. And it's sad that you have to do those, talk to your, tell your family that, but it's something that you have to know in order to survive in the world, the world that's set up for us.
All right, that's crazy. I feel like through all these videos, it's been sounding like anybody whose skin is brown, they basically have the same experiences. And that's why it's so crazy to me when like black and other brown groups of people don't get along, or don't get along, or one group is trying to be racist against black people, and it's like the same exact treatment. So why are you not more inclined to connect with black people? And if we build this coalition together of all black and brown people, there's way more black and brown people than there are white people. There are more brown people than there are white people, and if we account for there are more black people than there are anything. So it's like, it's just crazy to me when I think about how people want to separate themselves all the time from anybody who's darker skin, but through all of these videos, everybody who is brown skin has literally almost the same exact experience. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a pride thing or what, but even like, it's sad to say that I have family members too that, like, they say things like, based off the color of your skin, so the darker you are, you're, not as cute, or it's not a good thing to be. So yeah, it's definitely something that Western culture has affected, people of my descent, especially because there's a lot, the US troops or the military takes up about 30% of our small island to begin with. So it's a crazy thing that they have on us.
Yeah. So Chyanne, how does racism show up for you in the workplace?
So the biggest or the most significant time that it happened to me was when I was a lead office worker at one of the hospitals in Seattle. Sorry, I was getting ready to do a presentation, and there's going to be higher up people there. So the director at the time of the transplant place I was working at, he was Asian. So when I was getting ready to go up, he's like, you do really good for the Asian culture. Us Asians, we have to stick together. So I was just like, it's another example of, US education not giving the full background or, detail to, people. So when he said that, I was kind of like, I corrected him. I was like, well, I'm from Guam, that specific islander, I'm not Asian. He's like, yeah, it's the same thing, but really it's, it's not. And it's the struggle we have to fight with all, every day. And there's nothing wrong with, them saying that, I guess, there's nothing wrong with being Asian, but, when we've fought for, certain rights, and our people have been through so much struggle, you want to make sure that people know that you're your own, significant being. And I feel like that's something that the US doesn't teach or make significant in the education system. And every time I run into people like that, I just always, I'm just like, whatever, it's not them, it's just how they were taught. And that's one thing in the textbooks that they did not include. I think Guam's only mentioned like in a little paragraph in US history, like in high school. So
yeah. Anything, you already know, the education system here doesn't tell the truth about anything. It doesn't even tell the truth about what white people are doing.
Exactly.
That white people wanted to tell, not what actually happened. So,
Exactly.
Black history,
So
who do they always tell you about? Martin Luther King. I'm sorry, he's not the only person who did anything during civil rights, but that is the only person I'm talking about because he was the most palatable, because he chose
yeah,
non-force. You don't see them telling people and teaching you about Malcolm X because they no,
yep,
you're not for somebody who is not trying to do stuff in a way that makes them more comfortable. Well, we feel comfortable sharing Martin Luther King's story, part of it, because
yeah.
it wasn't, if I can turn the other cheek.
Rainbows and butterflies. It wasn't all that. No.
But they tell the story of how they want to tell it.
Yep.
So
Yeah. And it's crazy too, because like growing up in Guam, so we have to do the Pledge of Allegiance, the Star Spangled Banner. Then we have our own, our allegiance to Guam, and then we have our own version of our Star Spangled Banner and all that. And it's funny because when you're out there, you have to do it because we respect the U.S. and we give them gratitude for everything they've done. And then when you come out here, you get a lot of the students didn't even know how to say, do the Star Spangled Banner and the Pledge of Allegiance. So it was crazy to me, a little kid coming from the Guam, Guam, like, why do we have to do that and you guys don't have to? And we're, a foreign place to you guys, like it just shows you how much dominance or, precedence they have over us. And, what they teach out here is probably the same thing that they do back home, but we have to just take it the way they want us to see it, like you said, and we're just nobodies, I guess.
the other part that's crazy to me too, though, is just like with Guam and Puerto Rico, like you guys have all the rights of the United States except you can't vote. I'm sorry, then you don't have fucking rights then. Like you guys don't have a say in anything that goes on. Meanwhile, they're fucking telling you guys in your country what you are and are not gonna do. Like,
Yes, exactly. That's a big thing, right? Yeah, that's a big thing right now that a lot of the young Guamanian or Chamorro people are doing back home. They're wanting to decolonize, so remove the U.S. From there, which I think is a good thing to do. But we also do support get a lot of support from the U.S. But I know that just like back in the day before the U.S. was there, we'll be able to make it happen again. But it does have a lot of tension right now, especially with the protests going on here. It's really like riled people up back home to want to stand up and make changes, which is good. But like my grandmother and people of the older generation who grew up with the military, they're kind of against it. But that's definitely something we want to end, because we shouldn't want to take away from our culture and our land to make someone else profit or benefit from it. We should want to continue to teach our kids to carry on our legacies and make sure that it's here for my kids and the kids after them to enjoy and experience.
right. So Cheyenne, are people from Guam able to be in like military forces? They can be in the military?
Yes, they can. And I think even though we're like a really small island, we contribute to a lot of the enlisted people. I have 4 half brothers, so a total of 5 brothers, and 3 of the 5 are all in the military. And it goes to show how much of a commitment we are to the US and how much of an impact they have on us. And that's one thing that they push for back home. And something that I know that's different from when I came out here, which I'm kind of glad that I got to experience it, is if you grow up back home, they kind of tell you, just join the military, get off the island, experience the world. That's all you can do. But when you're out here, they push for you to be, like when you're with your peers, you learn from them that college and there's trades that you can go to, so you don't have to go through the military. So a lot of the Chamorro men sign their lives to the military. And sometimes when I hear my brother's stories, I'm just like, you're smart. You didn't have to do that. But of course, that's the agenda that they have set up for us back home to serve the U.S.
All right. And I asked because I was almost certain that you guys are able to, but to me it's like you can die for the United States, but you're not allowed to vote. Like,
Yeah.
sorry, this is a fucking joke. All they do is try to get black and brown people from all different backgrounds, fight wars that these old white people be starting. You start the wars, then you want black and brown people to fight them so you can be more
And
rich. But then places like Puerto Rico, Guam, they can't vote. A bunch of black men cannot vote because how they're doing their.
yeah.
their prison pipeline shit that they're always doing. So
Yeah.
a bunch of Black and brown people are stripped of rights, but at the same time, it's okay. You can still fight the war for us. You can go die for us. All of this type of bullshit.
And it's basic human rights. We should be able to, have a say of who's gonna be dictating us.
Right.
Yeah. So
If the
it's
president
crazy.
go to office and start a war and make the Chamorro people go to war because he decided to, why are you not allowed to vote for the person who's going to be in office saying whether or not you're going to war?
Exactly.
Damn sense.
And that's the stigma, Chamorro people, or of other people that are, U.S. territories. Like I just feel like I'm a pawn in all of it. Like we're just here for their benefit. So, yeah.
That shit's crazy. Okay, so rewinding back to work. Do you code switch at work, Cheyenne? Like, do you change the way that you talk, so you can be more palatable or make, different groups of people, most of the time it's white people, feel more comfortable? Do you code switch? And why?
Yeah. And it is, like you said, to make other people feel comfortable, or for me to sound more educated, I guess. But, you shouldn't have to do that. If that's the way I talk and I'm just as smart as you, I should be able to talk the way I talk. But yeah, it's definitely something that I do at work. When I'm in my office with my friend who's also Islander, we have our regular comfortable voice. But then as soon as someone comes knocking at the door that's in a white coat or is white, it's the hello, like the etiquette voice, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, that definitely does happen, and it's funny that you bring that up. But it does happen. And I feel like you're just more heard when you change and you match their tone and their language or how they talk. And I feel like it's more heard, I guess, especially when you're not of the same color as them, because when you walk in, you're automatically, just different.
Right. They automatically assume that you will be less educated or something.
Just to help something, like, oh, they're just here to grab some coffee or something.
Right. And you know what is crazy though? I feel like a lot of the times the people of color are actually the ones that are more educated. If you go and look at somebody's resume or their, how many degrees they have, I feel like most Black people that I know that have degrees, and then I go to work and I find out, okay, I'm in corporate America, thinking before I went there, I'd have to have so many things on my resume, to show that I'm worthy to be in here because there's such great people here. And then I went, and then certain stuff I was doing, I'm like, I have a degree, and a whole bunch of these white bitches don't have a degree.
Yeah.
Making
And
more.
I think that's something. Yeah, and it's just something that we always are told, like, oh, I have to have this because that in order for me to get this high, I have to look a certain way. Or like you said, when you look at someone's resume, I know off the tops they already look at your name and they're like, oh, they're different, or oh, they're African American, or oh, they're brown. So they're already judging right off a piece of black and white paper before they even see you.
All right. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I was naive going into corporate America. I was like, oh, well, that's good. I have my degree, I have this, I have that, whatever. And I started meeting people. I'm like, what? And they were giving me such a hard time to get in here. Like, I don't know, it's just ridiculous. And then the racism within corporate America is also a joke, where I was thinking, oh, well, I'm going to be in a place where there are a lot more educated people who have more money, which means they have the means to go travel.
And they know better, hopefully.
More cultured. And it's just like, no, yes, they travel, but they travel for the purposes of just pleasure for themselves. And then they come back and they don't give a fuck about the people that live in the places that they just came and visited from.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Great and blah blah, and then it's like, but you treat people who look like those people at work like shit.
Right. How does that make it make sense? Make it make sense.
No.
That happened to me in the position now. My director, I guess she started off in valet, then she worked her way up, and then I think she got the position now, or was able to move to it because the person before her liked her because she looked like her daughter. And I'm just like, I'm sitting here with a master's and then, like I'm thinking that I have to only apply to these certain positions because I don't meet the criteria. Then you have people that look like your redheaded, freckled daughter getting positions because you like her like that. It's crazy.
A fucking joke, actually. So
Yeah. I'm constantly laughing at work and like, just in my head, like, oh my God, I can't wait to go home and tell TJ about this. Like things like that. You're like, oh my God.
yeah, and it's funny, but then at the same time, then it's like, but it sucks though, because this person getting paid more money than me, and I've done way more work than they have to get to this point. But because they look like someone's daughter, they make 20.
Yeah.
That's a joke.
Yeah. But it makes you want to like work harder and stay in your position longer so that you're able to say, well, I did this because, I made my way. So it's nice that we're able to do that, but it also sucks that we have to go through so many hoops and obstacles to get where we are.
Right.
But it definitely, molds us into the people we are today and, the strong-minded, independent lady that you are and the things that you're doing,
So, Chyanne, with kids, because I know you have a son, do you and TJ plan on having like race conversations with him when he gets a little bigger? And do you remember if your parents had like race conversations with you guys once you guys came to the US, or did they not have the conversations with you guys, you and your sisters or your sister?
My mom didn't. I think I just learned on my own that there's certain things in life that I'm going to have to go through where I have to say things a certain way or do things a certain way because of where I'm from. And then as far as my son, with everything happening now, even before this, I did know and feel that we had to have the conversation with him, which is sad, but I want to be able to make sure that he makes the right decisions or he does the right things when I'm not around. And I think that in today's society, you're gonna have to do it, whether you like it or not, or if you're oblivious to what's happening. If you're a person of color, black, brown, whatever, you have to have a talk with your kids. We already have the talk with my younger sister, who's 10. She does sometimes go out in the neighborhood, and some of her friends are different. They're white or whatever. But I always make sure to let her know, like, when they say things, just come back, or like if you're not comfortable or they're saying things to you or acting a certain way like their parents or whatever, come back home and we'll talk about it. Or if you don't feel comfortable, make sure you let us know. I do tell her how to like if someone's approaching you like stranger danger things, just be aware of things and make sure that you tell us what's going on, because I want to be able to talk through with them, because a lot of times kids will hold that burden in them like, oh, I'm the problem, and I don't want them to walk around thinking that, because they're not. It's the ignorance that other people have towards them, or feel their way. So and kids know sometimes parents are like, oh, it's too early, but I don't think it's ever too early. The earlier and more aware they are, the better it is for you and them.
I think so too. I don't have any kids yet, as you already know, but clearly I'm gonna have to be having some conversations, especially if it's a boy. That's a whole nother situation of like level of safety than it is with girls, I think, anyways.
Yeah. And even with TJ too now, with everything going on, I'm usually the one that leaves the house to do stuff because I don't want him to be in danger or whatever. And I feel like I have to be the one to go out. So whenever we need like groceries or whatever, I'm just like, I'll just go. You guys stay home. I'll do it. So that's one thing that we've changed in the house. And I know that's something that we're going to have to, have a new routine about if, things get worse, which I hope they don't, but you never know with times like this. And one thing that I like to teach the kids too is if you see it and it's not happening to you, you have to speak up, because if you're going through it and you look around and other people aren't stepping in for you, you don't want to feel, you don't want to have to feel alone in those situations. So I make sure to tell them, if you hear something or you see something and it's not right, you can stick up and say something, make sure the person's okay, and then if I'm there, then have me come over there and help you guys. But just try and be the good person out of all the situations you're in.
I agree with that too, because I know me and my husband have conversations about this a lot, and we watch a lot of stuff, and you see a lot more Black people stepping in when injustices are happening against other groups of people. but you don't really see other groups of people really stepping up when they see somebody doing something to Black people.
Yeah, whenever I see something wrong, I usually speak up or I try and help the person. So like especially now with everything going on, I kind of feel like I'm on radar when it's like people that are African American. I tend to like if it's like a mom and her kid in the store, I'll make sure that I know like where they're at because if someone wants to say something to them, I speak up for them. Me being, brown too, I feel like if it was me, I'd hope someone would help step in for me too. So I know that's just one of the things that me and my sisters have really been big on. But, I'm just like, this is the time to start speaking up. Like, we need to be able to tell people they're wrong when they're wrong. We want to do our part.
So Chyanne, how do you think, like, the experiences of Pacific Islander people in the United States kind of manifest within you guys' community? So how do you think Chamorro people, Pacific Islander people, cope with the treatment that they get from people in the United States?
Well, I'll tell you that a lot of the older generation feel like they're superior for some reason because of the, like the war. So they don't even think they're low on the totem pole like the African American people. But oftentimes I have to remind, like my grandmother or other brown people, like if you're not white and they don't like you, you're just as bad as how they view the African American people. So I think the older generation is stuck on, oh, we're not, they don't see us like that. We're just as good as them. And then, the younger kids that are experiencing it now are just like, no, you're not realizing that you're missing these points and we're suffering because you didn't notice this later on. And I think the way that we're coping with it is, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the younger generation are trying to fight back against like the U.S. wanting to put more military training lands in Guam. So they're really protesting and going out there and speaking up. And there's a lot of support with the Black Lives Matter movement. So they're realizing that, if it's not white, it's us. I know locally there was a Pacific Islander protest that happened. They also did a peace walk for the Black Lives Matter movement because, us younger people are realizing that, like you said earlier, Black and brown people need to get along better and not be against each other because we need to have each other's back in times like this. So, yeah.
Are there any known sicknesses that Guam is known for? So, like, when I think of Puerto Rico or something like this, I know that because of colonialism, like, a lot of them have very bad, like, health, diabetes, this kind of thing, because they weren't allowed to eat from their land. They're only allowed to produce it. So then white people could ship it and make money from it. And so I'm thinking the treatment of people in Puerto Rico, because it's another island. I'm trying to see if there's any similarities. Has there been any downsides or consequences to that to the indigenous people of that land there? And how are people dealing with that?
Oh yeah. So back home, a lot of the very popular dishes or things that we like to eat are like very salted and processed foods. So like corned beef and spam and Portuguese sausage and chamorro sausage. And it's all because these things were imported to us during World War II when the U.S. Was taking over the island. And because we weren't able to, grow our own foods like we did before, we had to get things shipped to us. And I think I remember watching a video that my grandfather had sent to us during the war where like the US had literal parachutes of like food supply boxes dropping on the island and our people just waiting for it coming down from the skies. And it's kind of sad because one time when I went to a doctor's appointment when I was younger, I'm on the heavier side. So me and my mom walked in and she was like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna get diabetes. You're Pacific Islander. You're bound to get it." And my mom was like, "Well, I don't have it, and I go to my regular doctor's appointments, and of course I'm heftier too." So the doctor was like, "Well, I'll be back with paperwork and this and that." And after that, my mom was like, "That was pretty ignorant, and you shouldn't say that to people just because of where they're from." So we never went back to that doctor again. But that's definitely a stigmatism that we walk around with, and it's also like we like to eat rice breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And every time I go to a doctor's appointment, they're like, "Well, no more starches." It's just like how, when that's the thing that we were told to eat, when we were, in those times. And those are the things that we incorporate now into our dishes because that's what we know. It's passed down from generation to generation. So, and when you try to tell these older people to change it, they kind of take it as an insult because this is the way I've been doing it. And, I don't know anything else. So that's definitely something that has impacted the island, our diet, because of how we were treated during the war. Those things have stuck with us, and those are the things that we've incorporated into our everyday diet and what we deem as essential to our, food intake.
And so, in addition to that, what are some things that you think people from Guam struggle with because of, the U.S. infiltrating you guys' island?
A lot, like I said before, like a lot of back home, what they say is like, if you're dark, you're not pretty, or you're not as attractive, or it's not a good thing to have. So that's definitely something that's been said to me, like since I was younger, because I'm on the darker side and being Womanian or Chamorro. Don't be out in the sun, or you need to put more sunscreen on, or don't take the baby out because it's going to get too dark, or things like that. And that's definitely something that Western culture has impacted us on, because before the US landed there, I'm pretty sure we were all dark and we didn't have a problem with how we looked. So that's something that I think me and my sisters have struggled with mentally. So I think that's a mental thing that we deal with all the time, trying to look like our superior US leadership, or people that came and told us how to eat and look. And that's something that is probably going to continue, because I hear it still to this day.
And are Pacific Islander people, in your opinion, treated differently than people from Asia, Asian people, like someone who's
Yeah.
Chinese, Japanese, or Korean, or whatever?
Yeah. There's a lot of Japanese and Korean in Guam. There's a lot of diversity in Guam too, but there are a lot of the store owners and things like that. So um, I think they do kind of look down on us too sometimes when we go in the store. They think we're going to steal, the same stigmas as if you're a dark person here in the US and you go into a store, they automatically think you're going to do something bad. So I think it's the same back home.
Oh, damn, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's crazy because we're also occupied by the Japanese before the U.S. was there, and that's one thing that I think a lot of Chamorros think too, that the Japanese is like the best Asian culture, and we support them so much. But then when I think about it, I'm like, they're the ones that kind of enslaved us and occupied us for a while. So I don't know why we look to them to be so superior. So that's a different, definitely a thinking that I always thought too growing up.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's more studying to do on, on the Pacific Islands, for sure.
Yeah.
In closing, what do you guys have to say to the people who think that racism is non-existent and this should be a colorblind society and everybody is the same? Everything is not a race thing. What do you have to say to those people?
it Racism's not going away. It's the same thing when we say that we are at the verge of a new era where everything's going to be equal. We have been at the verge of it since the 1800s. You read some of the classics, and yes, there was the Civil War, and yes, the racism had to go out after that. Martin Luther King happened, and the racism was supposed to go out after that. Nelson Mandela happened. There are more than 100 revolutions that have happened over the past 300 years when racism should have gone away after that, and the color of the skin would not have mattered after that. But does it go away? Not really. It's just so innate in our bones now, and people who are born with a particular color, they live with that color, and they'll always look down. Certain sections of the people who will always look down upon the people who have a skin color darker than theirs. I don't understand it, but I know it exists. I see it exists amongst my peers, amongst even the people who say they don't care about it or, are not bothered by it. But yes, it irritates you to the core when it's like affecting you. If you are at the receiving end, that's when you feel bad. And A lot of times, the way I think about it is that for a Black person, she'd have to work double hard to get like at half the place where a white person would have to get to. And a lot of white people will not understand that struggle. If there is a Black boss who is supporting his Black subordinates because he understands how difficult it is for them to get at that place, people will always point out that, he's doing it wrong. He shouldn't be, favorism. Whites have had that favorism for years and years. Then why not, extend the same courtesy to a Black person as well? That person, I am pretty sure, had to, jump a million hoops to get where he is or she is. But again, racism is not going away anytime soon. Like, it's here to stay. All we can do is keep educating these people that, you have to stop doing this. You can't keep, defining people by their color. Maybe my daughter will have it different. Maybe her kids will have it different. But at least for my generation, I kind of have a very bleak opinion on it.
I agree. What about you, Chyanne?
So what I would say to people that don't think racism is an issue is you definitely have to educate yourself. And I would definitely say travel. That's a big part of, having to learn about different areas. So of course after COVID, but get out and travel, even if it means going to a place you've never heard of, like Guam. And, be open-minded about where you go. Leave all your thoughts or, your predispositions about it at home. Actually, talk to the people there or get as involved in, their community if you can or if you're willing to. But travel, that's the biggest thing for me. You have to be able to know that there's more things past the, these borders that we set up here in the US, and, just stay educated. That's probably another biggest thing. You have to be able to, accept other people and their backgrounds and what they have to say and, why things are done or how they do it in their ways. So yeah.
So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your experiences with whoever's going to end up watching this. I really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys. Nice meeting you, Chyanne.